The moment most people hear the words private jet, a very specific image appears. Leather sofas, crystal glasses, champagne at altitude, celebrities stepping onto the tarmac. It feels distant, extravagant, almost fictional. But that image hides a quieter reality inside private aviation. Because the cheapest private jet you can actually buy in 2026 does exist, and it looks nothing like a flying palace. It wasn't designed to impress crowds or dominate Instagram feeds. It was built for something far more practical. This jet exists because time, access, and control matter more than luxury for a certain type of owner. It's bought by people who value movement over image, efficiency over excess, and surprisingly, some pilots and entrepreneurs choose it even when larger, more expensive options are available. This video steps inside that reality, revealing the realistic entry point into private aviation without fantasy or exaggeration. In most industries, the word cheap suggests compromise, lower quality, fewer features, reduced reliability. In private aviation, the word itself becomes misleading. There is no version of a jet that exists outside a world of strict rules, specialized engineering, and constant oversight. Every private jet, regardless of size or age, must meet the same certification standards as far more expensive aircraft. The safety requirements do not change simply because the price is lower. Private jets are also built in limited numbers, often by manufacturers producing only a few dozen aircraft each year. This alone prevents prices from ever reaching anything close to mass market levels. On top of that, these aircraft rely on specialized maintenance, parts that are not interchangeable with commercial fleets, and technicians trained for narrow categories of aircraft. So when private aviation uses the word cheap, it is not describing affordability, it is describing position, the lowest rung on a very expensive ladder. When people imagine the lowest tier of private jets, they often picture something stripped down, almost experimental. In reality, the entry-level category is defined less by simplicity and more by purpose. To qualify as a true private jet at this level, the aircraft still needs to be jet-powered. It cannot rely on propellers or turboprop configurations that sit in a different class of aviation altogether. It also needs to support owner-operators or very small crews, because adding complex staffing requirements immediately changes the economics. Most aircraft in this category are found on the used market in 2026, and that is not a flaw. Older jets dominate the entry level because they have already absorbed the steepest part of depreciation. What remains is a machine that is proven, well understood, and widely supported. These jets are built for short-range missions, small groups, and focused travel. They prioritize utility over spectacle, movement over presentation, and access over impressiveness. Stepping inside the cheapest private jet in 2026 immediately resets expectations. The cabin is compact, narrow enough that movement feels deliberate rather than casual. The layout is simple and efficient, designed to move a small number of people quickly, not to host conversations in flight. Seating is upright and close, comfortable for short trips, but far from the lounge-like setups often shown in promotional imagery. There is no illusion of space here, only a clear sense of function. The atmosphere is quieter than most commercial cabins, yet the presence of the engines is never fully hidden. This is a working aircraft, not a silent retreat. When you step aboard, it feels closer to entering a private cockpit than walking into a flying living room. The controls are straightforward, the environment purposeful, and the experience personal. This jet is built for short, efficient missions, regional business hops, quick crossings between nearby cities, time-sensitive travel that values direct access over indulgence. It feels less like a symbol of wealth and more like a personal tool designed to extend your reach. The purchase price of the cheapest private jet in 2026 often surprises people, not because it is low, but because it finally feels within conceptual reach. On the used market, this category typically sits in a range that resembles the cost of a high-end home in a major city. For some professionals and entrepreneurs, that number is no longer abstract. It becomes imaginable. Ownership, however, is where perception often collapses into reality. Annual operating costs quickly accumulate through fuel, scheduled maintenance, hangar storage, insurance, and the quiet but constant expense of compliance. Even when the aircraft is flown lightly and operated by the owner or a minimal crew, the financial commitment remains continuous. The jet costs money even when it never leaves leaves the ground. First-time buyers tend to fixate on the purchase price because it feels like the moment of entry. Experienced owners manage the reality by planning for the rhythm of ownership, budgeting for downtime, and accepting that control of time always carries a persistent cost. What this jet gives you is not spectacle, but leverage. You gain control over your schedule in a way commercial travel can never offer. Departures bend to your calendar, not the other way around. You gain access to smaller airports, places that sit closer to final destinations, and quietly erase hours of ground travel. Privacy becomes natural rather than negotiated, and time efficiency turns from a travel goal into a baseline expectation. The experience reshapes how movement fits into a working life. What you do not gain is theatrical luxury. There is no stand-up cabin where you move freely at altitude. The interiors are functional, not lavish, built to endure use rather than signal status. Long-haul range is absent, which means this aircraft serves regional missions, not transcontinental ambition. This contrast is the trade that defines the entry level of private aviation. The jet gives you autonomy over movement, but it asks you to release the idea that every private flight should feel like a floating penthouse in the sky. This jet is built for people whose lives already move faster than commercial schedules allow. Regional business owners who travel between nearby cities see it as a way to compress days and reclaim lost hours. Entrepreneurs flying short routes use it to turn distance into something manageable rather than draining. Pilots stepping up from turboprops find a familiar sense of personal control, with the added efficiency and smoothness of jet performance. High-income professionals who value autonomy over comfort view it as a tool that quietly reshapes how work and travel intersect. But this aircraft is not for those chasing a cinematic version of private aviation. If the expectation is to stand, host guests, or cross continents without interruption, this jet will disappoint. It also does not suit travelers who want luxury to be the experience itself. This category exists for people who treat flying as infrastructure, not indulgence, and who measure value in time saved rather than moments displayed. Despite the arrival of newer, larger, and more technologically advanced jets, this category continues to exist because it fits neatly into the reality of modern travel infrastructure. Smaller airports remain central to regional mobility, and these jets are designed to operate comfortably within those limits. They do not require specialized runways or elite terminals to function well. That compatibility keeps them useful long after their design era has passed. Cost efficiency also preserves their relevance. While they are not inexpensive to own, they sit at a point where private aviation becomes practical rather than performative. For certain missions, anything larger simply adds expense without meaningful benefit. Reliability completes the equation. These aircraft are known quantities, understood by maintenance crews and trusted by operators. In a world where aviation continues to evolve, this jet endures because it reliably serves a narrow, practical purpose that newer designs do not replace. At the beginning, the idea of a private jet likely carried images of excess, soft lighting, quiet cabins, and an atmosphere designed to impress. What this journey reveals is something far more restrained and far more honest. Entry-level private aviation is not about escaping reality into luxury. It is about choosing a different relationship with movement itself. The cheapest private jet is not a shortcut into extravagance. It is an introduction to control. It offers independence over schedules, access over appearances, and reliability over display. The experience is deliberate rather than indulgent, practical rather than theatrical. In that sense, it reflects a deeper truth about private aviation that is rarely shown. Luxury, at its core, is not always about comfort. Sometimes it is about the ability to decide when, where, and how you move through the world. That is what this jet quietly represents.